Hello, Spiritual Center Spokane. This is Reverend Bonnie, and it's so good to be with you. I just came back from a trip with a friend. We went to Missoula, Montana, my first time being there. And might I say, that is a wonderful place to visit. And one of the first things my friend and I noticed is that there doesn't seem to be the homeless or unhoused issue that exists here in Washington State. That in the 4 days that we were in Missoula, we saw four homeless individuals, and that's it. And there wasn't graffiti, and the streets weren't dirty. And it was a very liberal hub in that all of the stores that we went to had signs on the doors welcoming transgender individuals, saying ICE is not welcome here, signs welcoming diversity, saying hate is not an acceptable way to live. I mean, it was just like this beautiful hug of love saying that we advocate for each other. We're here for each other. And it was such a beautiful reprieve. And it's only 3 hours out of Spokane. So I'm going to do a little bit of research and see if they have a place there that we could do a retreat because it was really, really spectacular. There's no tax there. So when my friend and I would go and have a meal, we would look at each other in delight, knowing that whatever it says on the menu is what we'd be paying. And it just was fun. So, our first full day there, we floated the river. The second full day there, we drove up to Hamilton and swam in Lake Como and then went to Darby, which is where the Yellowstone house is. So if you are a fan of the show Yellowstone, the house that Kevin Costner and family hang out in is there in Darby. And so I got some pictures with a friend there, which was really fun. And then our last day together, we went e-bike riding for 4 hours in the heat of the day. So it was quite the adventure. We went and biked on the college campus. We biked up and down the river. We went into downtown and had lunch. We saw a concert that was happening in a park, and it was just absolutely lovely. So, what a great trip. And then this week, I'm going to be at Science of Mind summer camp. And I am really looking forward to it. Thus, I have created this talk and practice in advance. So I will have you in my prayers while I am at camp. I am responsible for evening vespers where I will be sitting in meditation and prayer with individuals. And so it will be really easy to hold you in your highest and best. So consider that done. And I wanted to talk a little bit more today about spiritual maturity and the conversations and the awarenesses that I have had in my lifetime around being a woman and being at different stages of life. So I have been in reflection a lot these past 6 months. I believe that I'm entering into an elderhood of sorts. And so I'm changing. Something is going on within me and within my field that is calling me into a different place in consciousness. And it's still not clear what it is. I'm naming it elderhood. I have no idea what it is yet because it hasn't been revealed. But the process is interesting because where I give my attention to is very reflective. And so I have been reflecting on being me and being a woman, being a spirit in a woman's body in the lifetime that I have been here on this planet. And I was thinking about how I was raised. I was raised to, I was really raised to support a family. I was raised to love a husband and to put his needs before mine and to have a bunch of children and to run a household. And there was also a strand of desire in both of my parents that I go to college and be more than that. But more than that wasn't happening a lot when I was younger. And so the interesting thing for me is I had a direct experience of God at age 5. That's what I call it. When I was in my garden in Seattle in the backyard and felt the presence of God, which felt like a weighted blanket of love. It was so beautiful. It just surrounded me. And I got onto my knees and says, "Okay, God, I will grow up and I will be a minister." And it was a really profound moment for me because at that time I was taking myself to the neighborhood Episcopal church. And there at that time, there weren't female ministers, there were male priests. And so they were called father. And I had imagined that as a little kid, I didn't realize that I couldn't grow up and be a father. So I just assumed that I would become Father Bonnie. And I did think that was hilarious. But my experience of the love of this thing I call God was so significant that I said, I want to usher this into the lives of others and keep it active and alive in mine. And so I put myself on a trajectory to be able to be of service to this invisible weighted blanket experience I had at such a young age. So, one of the awarenesses that I have is now female priests, not Catholic, but Episcopalian, and rabbis and female ministers are plentiful. So, in my lifetime, we went from me assuming I could become one, but not seeing it, and then having the experience now where they are plentiful and where we are plentiful. And so that is an interesting observation. And then the other observation I had is the first training I became aware of was really self-esteem training. And self-esteem training came out of this positive psychology model. And it was geared mostly towards women. And it was, in my opinion, looking back upon it now, it really was a training on how to have self-agency, which young boys were trained to have from birth. But as being trained to tend to others as a primary goal, I mean, the first gifts that a girl gets are baby dolls, so that babies are raising babies, or babies are playing with babies, or mothering babies. It is so, I'm going to say insidious, but that has a judgment and connotation to it, and I'm not wanting that. But it is so obvious now, looking back, that as a female, I was trained to nurture, to tend, to support. And my brother, who got building blocks and Legos and all kinds of stuff, was taught to build and was taught to create and was taught to imagine. I mean, it was a very different training. And it doesn't make my parents wrong or anyone's parents wrong. It just is the way it was when I was young. And so the idea of self-esteem training, as I look back, seems to be we're going to, now that you're becoming part of the workforce, going to college, doing all of that, we're going to give you some of the training you didn't get when you were a kid. That's the way I see it. But it was agency-based training, like who are you? Um, how do you see yourself? What is important to you? What is your skill set? So it's self-observation, self-evaluation, and appreciating who you are as a human being. That's self-esteem training. That happened in the 80s and 90s. Then I was aware that following self-esteem training came happiness training. It's not so much training, but there was a big wave of books and materials and research done on happiness. And the Dalai Lama wrote a book called The Art of Happiness that I read. And happiness was really about finding meaning. And happiness was about purpose and drive and that sort of thing. And then I have become aware in the last 5, 6, 7 years that, especially for women, there's a big conversation around self-care. And so, as I've been meditating and contemplating on this thing called self-care, what I'm aware of is the capacity of the female in our culture has become so vast because we are able to nurture. We've been trained to nurture. We know how to. And again, this is all generalization, but there's the training on the family, the home, and now the specialty, the career, etc. So our and sports, we're now in sports. I mean, Title IX came out when I was in college. So we now have female athletes, thank you God, that are in pro sports. So our world has changed in my lifetime, and me as a female, me as a spirit in a female body, has been learning how to expand me. And self-care really is, in my opinion, all about energy and resources. How do I invest my own personal energy and resources? So if we're looking at capacity, if we're looking at energetic volume, then it becomes a question of where do I give my attention? Where do I give me? Where do I work? Where do I volunteer? Where do I serve? Where do I show up? How do I go about deciding what is a yes and what is a no? And and be and spiritual maturity is around one aspect of spiritual maturity is authenticity or alignment. Is that I do me in the best way I know how to do me. And I am not comparing myself to someone else or trying to be like someone else because that's impossible. I can't be a Julie or a Letitia or a Lillian. I am a Bonnie. And as this energy field Bonnie, when I try to behave as or act out of alignment of me, then I become depleted. When I do work that isn't mine to do, I become depleted. When I am around individuals that are leaking a lot of energy and aren't self-contained, I can become depleted. And so self-care to me is about the awareness of energy, the awareness of when I feel neutral and when I feel expanded. So I can make choices in relationship of, oh, in the presence of this person, I have more. There's more, the two the two and more consciousness becomes more versus being in relationship with someone who perceives themselves to be wounded, in which case there's an energy pull from me toward the other, and then I experience a depletion. A lot of this is because I'm an empath and I have gotten better and I know how to restore and how to tend and take care of myself. But that can and does happen where I slip up and go, oh my gosh, there's been too much giving or taking from without enough restoration. So the self-care to me is an energetic. So as I was thinking back over my life, I thought, isn't this interesting? I was taught to nurture. I was taught to be passive or take the back seat. And then as I entered the workforce, I was trained in esteem and self-esteem, self-awareness, and then into the question of happiness and meaning, and then into the conversation around what what allows my energy field to thrive so that it is beneficial for myself and for humanity. So coming full circle, as a child being taught to tend to the other, and now the conversation around self-care is tend to self. Tend to self, and in the tending to self, it overflows to the well-being of others. If I do Minister Bonnie, then my energy field expands and it overflows and it benefits everyone. If I do Chef Bonnie, nobody wins. Just saying. If I do basketball Bonnie, nobody wins. But in doing grandmother Bonnie, in doing friendship Bonnie, in doing writer Bonnie, in doing minister Bonnie, there's a thriving that happens in my own energy that also overflows to others. So while driving to Missoula, I listened to Glennon Doyle's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things, and she had Tori Dunlap on, who wrote this book, Financial Feminist. And I haven't read it yet, but I couldn't buy it fast enough. And it was really interesting to me because um, when I first started doing spiritual advising for individuals who came around issues of abundance, lack, wanting to grow businesses. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and growing their business through spiritual advising and through spiritual principle. When I worked with females who were around my age somewhere, um, then it always came up that we had to bust money myths because girls were trained different around money than boys were trained around money. And so the thing that was interesting was that as I listened to this woman speak, she did such an articulate, beautiful job of explaining in detail what those training differences were. And I used to say to my female clients, and still do, that in that we were first generation breadwinners as women, and we were paid and still are just a portion of what a male is for doing the same work. So we have the expectation of ourselves that we are to have a mastery in an area that is brand new, not only to ourselves individually, but to our ancestral lineage. So most of us can't look at our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers and say, this is how they made their money, invested their money, grew their money. Most of us started ourselves and say, this is, how do I do my money? What does this end up looking like? And so a man would look at his father, his grandfather, his great grandfather, all the way back to the beginning of mankind. And it has been inbred, embodied in their being that making money, growing money, expanding money, investing money, money literacy is a given. And so it is a totally and completely different thing for a female. And just like we learned self-esteem, we are to learn money mastery. And so I'm looking forward to reading this book. I don't know what will come of it. Like I said, I do a lot of one-on-one work with people. I don't know if I'll offer a class or what it might look like, but I'm looking forward to reading this. It just looks fantastic. And the podcast, the Glennon Doyle podcast, is very worth listening to. So Tori Dunlap is the author of the book, The Financial Feminist. And then I'm headed to summer camp this upcoming week. And the book that the every year there's a training session Monday through Friday in the morning. So morning is learning together, and then afternoon is free time. And this year, the sessions are being modeled after this book, Learning to Trust Yourself. Break Through the Blocks That Hold You Back by Tama Keeves. And so I've read all of Tama's books, and I am 2 chapters away from being completed on this one. And this book is one that when I read it, I said, "Oh my gosh, I wish I had written this," because this is about going from listening to everything outside of yourself, being externally focused, to learning to trust yourself, to make decisions that are in alignment with your own spirit. And that's something that I have lived. And I was like, darn it, why didn't I write that? Darn it, darn it. And so, anyway, this will be fun to see what the instructor ends up doing with this material. But this is a part I wanted to share with you. There's a lot I could share with you, but this is a part I wanted to share with you um, because it cracks me up and it's true. And this is in chapter 21. It says, think twice before you're nice. And chapter 21 is all about boundaries and it's about the ability to say no. And she talks about how, and we've all had this, where someone has said to us, come on, just grab lunch with me. You need to eat. Just come do this. So when you and I are working on a project, when you and I are committed to doing something of value to us, like when I'm writing a new book, it's up to me to make sure that I have boundaries in order to have the self-care I need to go from A to B and completion, right? And so what she's saying in this is when you get a phone call from someone who goes, "Hey, just take a break. Come on. You need to eat anyway," that this guilting that we say yes to sometimes, when we actually say yes and act on that, that this little bit of time ends up ruining the whole day. Ruining is too strong of a word, but it ends up taking our attention away from what our commitment was. And so we go out and maybe the service is bad, or we end up going to a different restaurant, or we listen to a really intense story from a friend and our focus is shifted, or we stop at a store on the way back home and there's a big, huge sale and we get caught up in something, or we get in a car accident, and this idea that we can sacrifice ourselves for someone else is again the way we were trained. So it's a natural, yes, of course, I'll go with you to lunch, but it doesn't serve our spirit self that is committed to a body of work in our lifetime. So this is the one sentence she said that I loved. She said, nothing in this lifetime is just an hour. So if somebody says to you, go, hey, let's just go grab lunch, nothing in this lifetime is just an hour. Hey, how about I stop by? Nothing in this lifetime is just an hour. She says, let me read a little bit of this because this is great. I used to have a hard time saying no to lunch dates. You have to eat, someone would say. I'd think, oh, I should go. Then I'd eat my heart out when I'd eat with them. I wanted time to write my book or to putter in preparation of writing. I ached when I did not write. I ached when I abandoned myself. Every time I said yes to a meeting, I didn't really want to do, I'd say no to my dream. The second I casually said, "Oh, sure, what time works for you?" I could have smacked myself. Others thought, "What's the big deal? You're just spending an hour eating a Cobb salad. How bad could that be?" But then there was traffic, road closures, a tiny little 5 hour stop to pick up something along the way, a slow wait staff, possible alien invasions, and small talk. Then the backlash of self-recrimination, the desire to scrub myself of every mewling, accommodating cell in my body. It was obvious that I'd require an exorcism to evict the demon of she who will not cause conflict and swallow her own bile. Next time the phone calls to friends, Next came the phone calls to friends to hyperventilate and vent, and naturally a Netflix binge and a vat of ice cream to smooth my nerves. Now the day was officially wrecked. Nothing in this lifetime is just an hour, especially nothing that is wrong for us. So I love that. I love that idea because, yes, when I make choices that are not Bonnie choices, and I go ahead and say yes to not Bonnie choices, then it takes time to bring Bonnie back to Bonnie. So I love that she said, then there's a diversion and then there's traffic and then this and that. And then I come home and then I call a friend and say, guess what I did? I let myself down again. And then there's the whole conversation about that. And then there's the depression that ensues and the ice cream that's eaten. And then it's like the day's gone, I'll just watch Netflix. So as we are able to again look at our patterns and how we invest our energy, it is so powerful because it gives us the ability to say no and mean no. Say no and mean no. And by saying no to what isn't ours, we say yes to what is. Boy, I needed to hear that today. Thank you. As I had that opportunity. So we're always learning and growing, right? It's fantastic. So let's go ahead and spend some time in meditation and prayer. Thank you so much for being here. It is such a delight. Let's take a nice big deep breath, roll your shoulders, your head a little. Mm. Now make a loud breath, breathing as deep as you can with an inhale and a loud exhale. Ah, how lovely. Again, inhale and exhale. Let's place a hand on our heart and one on our belly. And we're going to just feel the energy in the form of our breath moving throughout our body temple. And let's stretch our spine to be as tall as we can. And let's feel our feet on the ground as we feel our breath moving through our body. So we have a dual focus. Stretch out our arms. And let's spend 5 minutes or so together in silence. And now I invite you to Om with me. Om. 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 And again. Om. One more. Om. Allow yourself to feel the energy within your body and around your body. Imagine light streaming down through the top of your head, all the way down your body temple, out your feet, puddling and pooling around the floor. The light of God, the light of the universe, the light of love, the healing light. Now, as the light comes down, it continues to come down and through your body temple. Allow yourself to see or sense how big the auric field is around with that light. Ooh. And so I give thanks that this light of God is readily available to each and every one of us, that we can close our eyes in meditation and in prayer and feel and sense and know that the light is the very fabric in which you and I are created. We are made of light. We are made of water. We are made of energy. We live in a field. We live in a wave that shows up at times as particles. So, how lovely it is that we stop and meditate and remember the wave energy that we are. How wonderful it is to meditate for just a short few minutes together, and how wonderful it is to meditate for hours, speaking to our soul, listening from our soul, and having communion within ourselves. Allowing the healing balm of the universe to restore us when we need to be restored, to enliven us when we need enlivening, to soothe us when we need soothing. This divine presence is oh so present. And so I give thanks for each and every one of us that watches this YouTube video. I give thanks for each and every one of us that watches this YouTube video. I give thanks for each and every one of us that is willing to open and to receive the gifts of the Spirit, which is the very fabric of who and what we are. I give thanks for my life. I give thanks for each of our lives. And I just pray that in the congruence, in the alignment, in the awareness of spirit within, that each one of us goes forward this night, this day, from a place of love, bringing this good, this energetic balm with us everywhere that we go. I give thanks for the goodness and the glory of what I call God, of that which is infinite and eternal, and that which has taken form as each one of us in this time in history. So I bless our brothers and sisters on this planet. I claim right action and love as the ruling energy of the day. And I give thanks that each one of us is called to be what we're called to be and do what we're called to do, and that we have the courage to do so. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. All right, my dear friends, love you, love you, love you. When I am here next Tuesday, it is live, and I can hardly wait. Blessings, blessings, blessings.